What do you find to help people through that fear of failure? Because here you're always encouraging. I mean, at Keller Williams we have that environment that it's okay to fail and move forward.
I think people get the difference between training and education confused. I think that what happens is education is really about informing and training is about changing behavior. And most people go to education, but they don't get trained. And when we're talking about overcoming fear, my view is the only way you really overcome fear is experientially. You do it by experience. Mm-hmm. People that are not afraid will learn, and their experience is actually in the doing. It's not in the practicing. They'll learn experientially just by doing it. But people who are fearful, they have to experientially learn it in a safe zone. You have to go train yourself. So that 3 to 4 hours a day in the morning before noon, there has to be 30 minutes or an hour of practice time where you're actually practicing your scripts and your dialogues so you feel comfortable, so you're not afraid of making a mistake. You know what to do.
Well, you know, one of the things that happened with us, and Tony was a role play partner, and Joel Rico, and I had many role play partners, and I found that very, very easy to pick up the phone and have some wins before I actually picked up the phone.
It's really interesting. I had a coaching call this morning, and the lady was going, well, I don't know what to say to an expired. I said, well, have a conversation with them. I gave her 3 or 4 questions, and then let the questions take you where you want to go. And she said, what if I say the wrong thing? I said, what's the wrong thing? Yeah. Their answer gives you the next question. Mm-hmm. Listen carefully.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah.
And she said, I feel comfortable with that. I said, okay, let's role play a little bit. She asked me some questions. I gave her some answers. I asked another question. I said, now you do it. She said, this is simple. I was trying to jam a script that I felt uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? You were trying to sell an expired on who you are. Why don't you find out what the expired wants and then see if you can help them? So I think the practice has to be, what can we do to find out what they want? Then can we fulfill the needs? And the more needs we can fulfill in the next 180 days, the more successful we're going to be.
Well, most people do not really practice anything.
Right.
They really don't rehearse before they go do. If an individual will simply schedule in 30 minutes to an hour every day of practicing how to communicate effectively with people, right? Well, all 3 of us do a tremendous amount of interviews. When we interview successful agents, are they ever without a script?
No.
Even if they stumble a little bit, you hit them hard, and they kind of stumble for a little second, they ultimately weave their way to the script, don't they?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. When we interview or talk to agents who really haven't practiced and or are not successful, what is the one thing they all have in common?
They stop and think, or they go, I don't know.
They don't know what to say. The absolute difference between the two is they don't know what to say. And what I keep pointing out to people is you are in the communication business. What do you think you get paid to do? Talk, communicate, yeah, share. Absolutely. That is what you do for a living. If you haven't learned the scripts, if you haven't learned the train of thought in the scripts, I'm wondering what you have in that toolkit that is supposed to help people. You may know the information, but if you don't know how to communicate it, how are you going to be successful?
Well, it's interesting, like when we did the tape with Chris Heller. Chris Heller has the scripts right in front of him. He's done them how many tens of thousands of times. Mm-hmm. And he has them there because when somebody takes them off script, he just looks and says, okay, here's where I get back on script.
Well, here's the wonderful thing about that, and that is he's doing a lot of that by the telephone.
Right.
The buyers and sellers can't see that you've got everything laid out in front of you.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always tell people, if you have a fear or a fear that you will not remember what to say, even though you've practiced it, then just work with the telephone because they can't see that you've got everything spread out in front of you. Right. And as they're asking you a question or they're making a statement, you're going,
right.
That's a good point that you're making.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
You can carry your scripts with you under every situation.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, what we have is a highly educated, poorly trained industry. Mm-hmm. They understand the business. They understand the real estate side of it. They don't understand the communication sales side of it. And the problem is, if you don't understand that, you never get invited to do the other.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people in our industry are actually well educated. They've attended the education. They understand the business. They understand the issues. What they haven't done is practiced enough and trained to themselves enough to be able to go out and effectively communicate and deliver what it is they know, so they live in fear.
So they don't use the words either. When you know the words, I call it the language of sales or the language of influence, you literally have the words and you make them a habitual word that you use all the time. And it's a practice. You'll never get it without practice.
Deliberate practice. It's all about deliberate. Success is about deliberate practice.
So if we were to boil this down, in the next 180 days, what would each of you say is the one most important thing our agent should be doing?
She said it. You go to your calendar and you said it. You go to your calendar and you schedule 3 to 4 hours before noon, and you make that first 30 minutes to an hour practice on the scripts and the dialogues.
So that means you could be starting at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, or 8 o'clock or 9. I really don't care when you start.
It's the fact you do it.
Yeah. So when we talk about living the schedule, which is what you said, which I love that. And it's not just real estate.
Yeah.
I think that parenting lives a schedule. I think that we can go to the things that matter most in our life and say, it's actually about living a schedule, figuring out what matters, prioritizing it, putting it into your calendar, making an appointment with yourself, and living those appointments. Right. That's how you get disciplined. People say, well, I'm not disciplined. You say, well, most of the world isn't disciplined. It isn't discipline that you need. It's prioritizing and scheduling that you need.
So basically what we're saying is live your energy morning, practice for a half hour to an hour, and lead generate 3 to 4 hours, and when you're done, that's your day.
Yeah, have a great half day. And if you can simply schedule the 3 or 4 hours, you're good to go for the entire day.
Yeah. Be sure we realize that calling today will get you some appointments today, but more importantly, it'll start filling your pipeline to kick out appointments in the next 30, 60, or 90 days.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's it.
So, great.
All right, very good.